I suspect that the sight of their warship being towed by a Federation runabout took the heart out of their fight.
We're not done with the Cardassians yet. Not with the strategic importance of that wormhole.
Well, you've put Bajor on the map, Commander. This will shortly become a leading center of commerce and of scientific exploration. And for Starfleet, one of our most important posts.
Alright, hey, good evening my friends. Welcome to the Sloppy Modeler. And we are back after our work on the Chariot from Lost in Space, the 1/24 scale by Mobius. So what we have here is our AMT/Round2 USS Rio Grande, NCC 72452, the Runabout. And out of the gate, I'm going to go ahead and light this one here. I think there's just some fun stuff, and I'm going to have to do some creative things on this here intake at this point and some of the other pieces. And there is an excellent build log done by Donuts in Space on YouTube, and he's done the whole interior and all the lighting, and his paint work is absolutely phenomenal. So I'm going to give it a shot. There's all these little gray panels and details, and keeping straight which paint I use for which panel is always a challenge. So I'm just going to have to figure that out as I go through this time. On the side here is a pretty neat quote on the box here. It says, "It is the unknown that defines our existence. We are constantly searching, not just for answers to our questions, but for new questions. We are explorers." And I think for anybody that's a fan of Star Trek, and I am, anyone that's a fan of Star Trek would admit that that is what typically drew them to the Star Trek franchise in the first place. The space battles and the conflicts, yeah, fine, you know, that adds excitement around the edges. But I think if one spot where J.J. Abrams missed the boat when he did the J.J. prizes back in 2009 and forward, is he missed that explorer part, going out and finding new worlds and new civilizations. So with that, the Rio is already kind of prepped and underway. I went ahead and took most of the parts off of the sprues and started with all of them have now been washed in soapy water, washed and dried. They've had a couple of days to dry, so all these parts that come out of here have already had all of that done, excluding the clear plastic parts. I'll wash those when it comes to it a little bit later. But for the most part, this is a pretty simple kit. There's only something like 45 or 47 parts, really pretty straightforward when it comes to it. One nice thing about the box, it does have the color scheme. Rather than doing that in the instructions, the color scheme is essentially all over the box itself. So you can see, you know, here's the colors, here's the decals. They probably saved some time to paint, and it gives a little nicer pitch and color to it. Standard dome for polar lights, as has been the case for most recent kits. Nice detail here, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but it does need some cleaning up. It's got some work to do where it took it off the sprues, so I'll have to do some sanding and a little trimming here and there. There is minimal flash. Really, it was primarily where some of these parts came off the sprues. One of the things I do know is that putting this together and watching some of the builds is that these points up here around the Bassard collectors, those joints and seams are just horrendous. You can already see that they're off, you know, in this direction here, and the plastic isn't much better. Like I said, there's just a lot of challenge all the way around it when you go to put this together on the nacelles. With that being said, on the nacelles, I am going to add the lighting for the warp engines and the Bassard collector, the red, the blue, and you know, the yellow paint around here. Also, I'm going to attempt, and we will see how this proceeds when we get there. On the tops of these, you see that there's that little mark right there, and there's a little mark right here, and there's one on the back of the back top of the hull, which is right there. And those collectively on the right side will have green, and on the left side, when you're looking forward, will have red. So this side will be green, and this side will be red. And, you know, for anti-collision marks. I don't think I'm going to put a flashing beacon in this. I haven't seen it in the Runabout footage, so I don't think I'm going to do that. But you know, this is going to be a lot of fun to light block. You know, it's fascinating looking at the way that they cast this or molded this in this plastic. It's got a really kind of a blue, gray, green color, and I was able to find this color from Martha Stewart's, which is called Cloud. The problem is it's almost an identical match for match, which would be great, but in all of the photos I see the base color is gray. So instead I went out and got my Tamiya paints, and we'll find the proper appropriate gray for the base, or maybe a couple other grays that I'll look at, and then choosing all the grays, the different gray colors that are available for the gray colors that are available for the for the Martha Stewart paints. I've got quite a bit of that, so I might just find something I like there and use that. There is quite a bit of detail in this kit. I mean, you see all of these panels, all these recessed panels and so forth. That just lends itself to the color scheme that they've put on the box, and you know, even on the bottom. There's lots of neat raised detail, and I think this is going to be kind of a nice addition to the kit. The lighting is going to be pretty straightforward. Essentially, I'm going to light the Bassard collectors and the intakes, which are these right here. And so you've got this piece, that's the rear, and you've got this piece right there. And what I think I'm going to do is take my drill and hollow this out, and then face it with a plastic, and hopefully I can find a plastic that's got a bit of a pattern in it that matches the pattern that's in that. I don't want to go to the trouble of buying a resin kit, and there is a resin interior kit for this, but basically to take that out is pretty straightforward, and then drilling that out to have a red impulse engine is going to be a little tricky. That's a pretty small area, and then figure out how to light that with a red LED behind it of some sort. So that is in the works for that particular piece. In addition, in the front, you've got up on top of it, they do have like a data collector, and essentially that goes together pretty straightforward, much like this. And then this piece goes in here, and what a lot of people do is, I've seen some guys drill 6 holes on each side, 6 holes here, and put fiber optics. I think that's a bit much for me. So I think I'm just going to drill a hole and put a raw soft white LED there, kind of as a headlight look. But we'll see. Maybe I'll drill that out and put a facing plastic behind it, or polystyrene clear piece behind here, and project through it rather than having the bulb exposed. So we'll take a look at a couple of those different options as far as doing the lighting for that. So that's going to just be a real simple lighting kit for that. The impulse engines, and then lighting the nacelles, the Bassard collectors, and then the anti-collision lights that you see on both sides, which 2 on each side. And working through a lot of the guys have spent a lot of time on the light blocking of that particular light. Considering you're probably going to have a light strip here, and then you're going to have a red LED bulb here of some sort that shines out for the Bassard collector to make that look the way it needs to look. So that's going to be some experimentation with the LED lights that I have available to me. Again, nice detail on this. These are really kind of add-on gribblies that'll go you know, here and here, and then putting in the lights. Now what I am intending to do, I'm going to leave this window is black in the photos. It's black on most of the imagery that you've got here. So yeah, it's a good example. So you've got these black windows here, and black windows here, and black windows there. I think in order to add just a little bit of liveliness towards the front of the cabin, what I'm going to do is back paint this here with white primer, just enough to let that white primer shine through, that white coat shine through. And then same thing here, across this line right here, I'm going to paint the top black and the bottom portion I'm going to white primer. Or maybe opposite, maybe I'll do these in black and that in white primer. But basically give it so that there's some illumination coming out of that front window. And I think it's really going to be white primer out of the front, just so that it's a frosted look. Very much like the Enterprise original series planetary dome and the bridge dome, where people paint those just a frost white and let them go. And then of course the Bassard collectors are here in the yellow. And this doesn't show it, but there's green lights there. And the other question I have is whether I will do anything with the thrusters, which I believe are right here. So I might add some simple lighting to the thrusters that work on a separate switch in order to show that the thrusters are being engaged to move this giant ship around. I don't know why there's only 2 thrusters on this ship. I don't think that would be enough from a physics perspective to move this entire ship around. So great detail on this kit. And again, it's going to be fairly simple from a build construction standpoint. And I did this clear back in the early 90s, and I'm ashamed to say at the time I basically glued it up and then took a can of bronze spray paint, I think that's what it's called for at the time, and just coated the whole thing. And had taped off the windows, coated the whole thing, and called it good. So it had the shape, but it sure didn't have any character behind it when it was all said and done. So a couple of things to watch for is to figure out how to keep track, for me, which panel gets which color of gray. And even though they put the color scheme on the box, they didn't identify the color scheme, other than if you have to do it by identification on the box cover itself. So they say, okay, this is this color. They don't say which color it is. It's just the fact that it's got a different tone than the rest of the ship. And they don't say, okay, this is color I, this is color, E, this is color, T or S. They don't do any of that. Basically just try to match it as you will. So I'm going to have to look at that pretty carefully. This is the arrow that I saw Donuts in Space painted in white, and I don't like that look. I think it's too bright, and so, but we will make that a different color that's just a shade different from the hull. And then here in the warp core, we'll paint that maybe a blue or something like that. And then the other thing that I don't know how I'm going to do it yet is I don't have the part to do this as a lighted part, so it's just going to get paint. But I might try to Raytheon light that from the bottom, where I might not tape off that, or I might tape it off and not light block it. Paint these blue and black on these ribs, figure out how to do that, or blue and silver, and then have at least some lighting, kind of like I did for my Cylon Raider, the original series Raider, where those reds come up through the paint. So with that, that is the Sloppy Modeler's introduction to the Runabout Rio Grande, and I think I'm going to do it as the Rio Grande. I'm not have any intention of doing a bunch of these, so just the standard Rio Grande that's was seen in most of these. And I'm not sure how long it's going to take, but probably a few weeks, considering this is going to be a lit kit, and then figure out whether to do it self-contained. It would be nice to do it self-contained with a switch, but I need to figure that out. I probably will put it on a base of some sort, or just wire in the actual dome base, because it's a larger one, so you could easily hide the battery in there, and then put the switches right on it, and you're all said and done. Probably going to be ordering some new types of switches for this. I don't like the toggle switches that I use for the Battlestar Galactica work I've done, so we'll stay tuned for that as far as which switches are going to go with which with this particular Star Trek brand, because I want to do that across all the Star Trek kits I'm going to build coming in. So that this is the introduction to the USS Star Trek Rio Grande Runabout, and I hope you go out and enjoy building something. because it sure is a lot of fun. And this is the Sloppy Modeler signing off. Thank you.